there are so many different ways of validating an idea. And actually, I was on a call earlier with a founder who had set up a business, had spent 2 months doing outreach essentially to thousands of people that she thinks are her ideal customer profile, to get pretty much no responses. And that's validation. That is validation that the solution that you're providing to those people is not the right solution. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that you can't come up with a solution, but you're just not solving a problem that's pressing enough for them, and therefore they're not hitting reply and they're not buying your solution. So in many respects, it is about doing that initial research and spending the time with your target audience, understanding exactly what the problem is so that you can come up with a solution that works for them rather than just something that you're excited about.
This is Let's Make Waves podcast. I'm your host, Rana Al-Basri Mawad, and I believe that we're all here to make waves. I created this podcast to help you build your brand by sharing with you tools, resources, and strategies to gain professional authority for better business opportunities. If you want to get unstuck, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Make Waves podcast with me, Rana Al-Basri Mawad. In this week's episode, I got the chance to chat with a phenomenal entrepreneur based out of Dubai, UAE, who has pioneered 2 global diversity platforms, selling her second business for 7 figures in 2023. That automatically makes her one of 0.5% of female founders globally to successfully exit her company. It's a big deal. So I had a chance to chat with Helen about everything, about so many things that are, I believe, that are very important for everyone who is building a business or plans to build one. We covered a lot of topics such as being a woman founder, the challenges that we face building a dream, all while juggling a family. We also talked about an overview of her tried and tested 7 principles to succeed as an entrepreneur. And we touched on many topics. One of them is, how does authenticity and self-marketing play a huge role in this journey of entrepreneurship and being a founder? Her book and her soon-to-launch program were one of the topics, and so much more. So I won't keep you waiting any longer. I hope you enjoy the show. Helen, I'm so excited and I'm so happy, and thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast. Before I pick your brain on so many things, I have so many questions for you regarding becoming a founder, how to navigate that sometimes very lonely experience, and talking everything about purpose-driven businesses. I would like to start first by congratulating you on your amazing book, The Female Founder Formula. I absolutely love it. I'm a person who reads with a pencil in their hand.
I love that.
So I take notes and everything. Yeah. And you can see these. I take notes and everything. I absolutely love it. Female Founder Formula. This is a title you don't see it much when you're, walking down the aisle in bookstores. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. one of the hardest things about writing the book was the title. It broke my brain for a year, probably. And I went back and forth on it numerous times. And I mean, I can tell you about 5 other titles that were nearly the title. And I really hesitated to put female in there. The reason being that I didn't want to make it too niche. I didn't want it just to be focused on women, because that isn't the point of the book. The point of the book is to bring a feminine perspective on the world of business, which when I've been building my businesses, and I'm sure everybody is probably the same out there, the majority of the advice that you get is from men. And there's nothing wrong with that. It certainly helped me along the way. But the vast majority of my advisors, my mentors, the people who ran the accelerator programs I was on, as well as the business books that you buy, are written by men. And actually, there is so much more of a different perspective when you're building a business as a woman, particularly if you have caring responsibilities, but also just in the way that you see business and just in the way that you kind of conduct yourself, the decisions that you make around kind of funding and financing and management and relationships and all of those types of things. So that's why in the end, I decided that the Female Founder Formula had to be the title, not because it's written just for women, but because it's written from a female perspective. And it's been really surprising in a lovely way to see how many men have bought the book, who've sent me kind of reviews or sent me pictures of them reading it or whatever it may be, or have joined a call and they've gone, bought the book. It never fails to shock me, but in a very positive way. So it has come full circle. I'm really pleased that I went with that title, because as you say, the point is it needs to stand out, right? And it needs to kind of make a point.
Well, I'm really happy that you actually wrote the book from your lens, from your perspective, as you said. And I'm glad that we have authors like yourself who are putting the perspective of, of the women when it comes to business and when it comes to the landscape of being a founder. And in so many areas, you are kind of navigating in a space where it's very much male driven. Your journey, you've reached to a place where you've founded 2 global diversity focused platforms, the second of which you've sold in 2023 for 7 figures, putting you at a 0.5% of women founders globally who have successfully exited their businesses, their companies. And you start in this book, and I'm so glad that everybody. I've read this book. You have to read it. It's irrelevant of the gender, but the perspective is amazing. But your journey started in 2015, and I want to just read this part because I think that it's a great opportunity to see how sometimes something clicks in the mind of oneself, and then it's from there the journey starts. I love that you start with this. You say, "Hi, I'm Ali. I'm just a mom." I couldn't believe the words I was hearing. It was a Wednesday morning in Midtown Dubai, 2015. I just started a photography class. I was in depths of maternity leave with baby number 1, struggling to remember what a laptop even looked like, let alone my password to it. I knew Ali, and I knew full well she wasn't just a mom. She was the ex-president of the private banking arm of a huge global bank in Sydney. So to her, maybe she was just a mom. I was furious for us, for her and for us all. So this was the beginning of a purpose-driven business. Can you tell us more about the start?
Yeah. I tell that story because it genuinely was the very, very starting point. And I just remember the feeling. I remember the feeling of being in that class and not expecting anything from that morning aside from learning how to use my camera better, walking into a room of women who were probably my age, maybe a little bit older, and thinking I didn't expect to see these people here. And then the tutor asking that question of who are you and what do you do? And they all answered, I'm just a mum, And he had to say to them, well, what did you do before you were just a mum? Yeah. And then they sort of said, I used to be the ex-president of this, or I used to have my own business, or whatever it may be. And then, towards the end of the session, because I'd introduced myself as being on maternity leave, as working in the advertising industry, about a third of them came up to me and said, can you help me get a job? And I said, well, no, how would I even do that? And I went away and just thought, this is ridiculous. All of these women, and this is just a snapshot of kind of 12, 13 women sitting in a class on a Wednesday morning, essentially with not much better to do with their time, but so many skills and so much ambition to do something better with their time. And there just wasn't a solution. And it was kind of, it's pre-hashtag Me Too. It was pre-Gender Balance Council, for those of you who are familiar with the UAE landscape. And there was nothing kind of meeting the corporate agenda of improving gender balance, the UAE directives from the government around it, and the private sector helping to bridge that gap. And I just thought, well, if not me, who, and so I started on the journey of doing the due diligence, doing the research, reaching out to relevant platforms, speaking to women and just figuring out what it is they actually wanted. And that's really where the idea for Hopscotch came about. And that business launched within a year of that. And I was 7 months pregnant. So not great timing, but sometimes you just got to press the button on these things and see what happens. And it just went from there to there kind of overnight, which was incredible.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's like most of us, we are in certain situations and then an idea pops up, or a situation happens where it kind of, makes you just step back and think about it. But what's beautiful about your journey is that that's the start of your experience of becoming a founder, and the lessons that actually give in this book. How can you take founders today from that point of coming up with an idea or a situation that kind of triggers a question in their mind to the next step, which is basically validating that idea? And if they have they're taking care of an elderly parent, or they have their parents, they have kids, how do they manage to basically build a support system so that they can validate the idea and get that support? A lot of entrepreneurs have that.
Well, that's it. And I think, that we could probably talk about just that one question for the rest of this podcast. It's kind of, there are so many different ways of validating an idea. And actually, I was on a call earlier with a founder who had set up a business, had spent 2 months doing outreach essentially to thousands of people that she thinks are her ideal customer profile, to get pretty much no responses. And that's validation. That is validation that the solution that you're providing to those people is not the right solution. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that you can't come up with a solution, but you're just not solving a problem that's pressing enough for them, and therefore they're not hitting reply and they're not buying your solution. So in many respects, it is about doing that initial research and spending the time with your target audience, understanding exactly what the problem is so that you can come up with a solution that works for them, rather than just something that you're excited about. Because that's one of the dangers when you have an idea, and you get that kind of feeling that I did in that class that morning. It's kind of, you come up with something and it runs away with you. And you forget to sort of sense check it and check in on whether it's actually solving the problem that these people have, particularly if those people are not you, if you're not in that position personally. And that's one of the challenges. But I would say that just takes time. It takes research. It takes face-to-face conversations quite often, or focus groups, in order to do that. And in doing that, you then are starting to also build your community. You're starting to build your support system. You're starting to build potential partnerships, and you're also starting to build even a kind of wait list or an outreach list that you can then use once you have a solution to that problem. So it's a really, really important phase. I took probably, as I said, maybe 7 months doing that with Hopscotch initially. The same again with Diversely, where we had 20 beta testers of our tech for my second business. And in a way, I've been doing exactly the same thing with the Founder Sanctuary over the last year, working with founders one-to-one, understanding where those issues are, and making sure that I'm building something that people want, rather than, creating a solution that just works for me because I'm able to build it. So that is a really, really important process. And in terms of, to the second part of your question, how do you make sure that you have the support system that you need? Well, it comes as part of that first answer. Yeah. But also, you will be surprised when you get that bug and when you get that feeling of just frustration or inspiration or whatever it is for you, where that extra energy comes from. And you will spend more time than you can possibly imagine trying to solve that problem. You will find time that you never knew that you had when you suddenly get that energy from trying to create that solution. I've seen it happen to so many founders. I met a founder a couple of weeks ago who's in her 20s, and she should, by all rights, be out partying and, you know, hanging out and traveling and doing whatever it is 20-odd-year-olds do. She has spent the last year being stuck to her laptop, creating this incredible business that she's now launching. So you'll find a way. You will find a way. When you have that inspiration and that energy, you will find a way.
Yeah, and it's actually your first principle in the book. It's the commitment to find a way. If we just go back on the validation part, because I feel like a lot of founders, what happens is that they either try to create a business because they faced a problem, but maybe it's uniquely to them, so they're not aware of it, or they feel like, I have a great idea. Why don't I just hire someone and then they can run with it? You are very particular about that first principle when it comes to the commitment, and your second and your third principle when it comes to the knowledge. You believe that this particular phase is a very important phase that actually plays a huge role. And later on, the success, you know, between, for instance, the success or the failure of the business, or whether you need to pivot at one point.
Yeah. You need to get your hands dirty. You need to understand what's working and what's not working. And, you know, in chapter 3, when we talk about knowledge, there's an exercise to go through there, which is the hiring quadrant exercise, which will categorically tell you when you need to hire somebody. But it's 90% of the time not the right time to hire somebody. It's actually time for you to be putting the work in and making sure that you're, you know, understanding the problem as well as you possibly can from the perspective of the people that you're trying to sell to, not from your perspective. That's very, very important. And you are the only person that can do that. You need to fundamentally understand why you're building the solution that you're building and what value it offers to that end customer. You can't find somebody on Upwork who's going to do that for you. You can't find, you know, for goodness sake, don't go out and hire some very expensive, you know, C-suite person, managing director, whatever it is of your business in the early days, because it will fail. You know, you are the founder of that business and you need to understand it end to end for it to make sense and for you to be creating the solution that works for people. And that will change, you know, that will change and that will pivot maybe even on a kind of daily, weekly, monthly basis as you're building that in the early days. So it's really important that you spend that kind of time doing that right at the start. And don't be married to the solution. You can be married to the problem, which I definitely was, but do not be married to your solution. Be flexible in the way that you view that. You know, there are many, many different approaches to solve a problem. You've got to find that solution that works for your customer profile.
Yeah, and being married to the solution in you know, the way you say it, you also talk about it in your book. It's about having that mindset, the mindset to be open for a pivot, and the mindset to be open for, as you said, you know, the way we're tackling it this way didn't work, or 100%, you know, to our vision versus, you know, another way. Yeah. And this is exactly what happened to you in your first business, Hopscotch, right?
Yeah.
You had to pivot.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I look back at Hopscotch now and you know, you look at all the awards and you look at the businesses that we worked with and you look at the crazy number of people that were involved in that as a business over sort of 4.5 years. And from the outside in, it looks very successful. And it was, you know, to the extent that it worked, but it was really only scratching the surface. And for me, that was hugely frustrating, because remember that I'd started off with a feeling of unfairness, with a feeling of, you know, we need to solve this problem around gender balance in the workplace, but equally around bias, you know, around looking at people who left work for a couple of years because they were bringing up kids and suddenly they were no good and on the scrap heap. That same bias that affects women, also affects so many other, or all underrepresented groups, particularly when it comes to workplace and hiring. And so for me, it was kind of, okay, how do we solve this problem at the root? How do we kind of dig it out and make sure that nobody is facing this unfairness, and that we're leveling the playing field so that everybody is getting a fair chance, dependent on their skills, their qualifications, their ability to do the job, not what they look like, what gender they are, what school they went to, any of those types of irrelevant characteristics. And so that's where diversity came in. And I knew that I needed tech to do that. I knew I wanted it to be globally scalable. And I am not a tech person. So that was hugely frustrating for a couple of years, where I was trying to kind of figure out, right, how do I know what I want to do, but how do I build this? And that's what landed me at the doors of Antler at the beginning of 2020 in Singapore, just as the pandemic was kind of kicking off. And this is where that phrase, be married to the problem, but don't be married to the solution, really came up, because they asked me that question. They said, look, we love the problem you're solving. Your background's great. We'd love you to be on the program, but we hate your business. we hate the solution you've created, because it's completely not scalable. It's just service-based and it's built around you, and it can't go much further. And I said, fine, because I'm starting to hate it too. Let's, build something different. And that's really where diversity came into play, kind of taking all of those lessons. And again, this comes back to your point around doing the hard yards at the beginning, because I knew those lessons inside out. I understood those problems inside out. And it was taking those problems and creating a tech AI-driven solution to them, rather than me standing in a room hosting an event, or me putting on another initiative, or me, finding somebody a flexible position. That was only scratching the surface. Diversity was kind of getting to the root of the problem.
Helen, I want to ask you, this experience that you had, where you had to stand in that room and you're like, fine, I'm not married to the solution, let's find it, but my purpose is still my number one priority.
Yeah.
You're working closely with so many founders from all walks of life and different businesses. I don't know. I see it from a communication perspective as a strategist myself. And I feel like that's a typical common thing in the mindset of a lot of founders, where they feel like, I just need to see it till the end. Maybe it needs, a little bit more effort. Is that something you see with your clients?
Yeah. All the time.
All the time.
I think, but I also see the other side. There are, just taking Antler as an example, there were probably 90 people that went through Antler. Maybe 50 made it to the end, if that. And of those 50, I can name probably a handful that have gone on to actually found businesses and are still founders now. Some founded businesses and kind of ditched, and some people ditched on the program.
It's a tough program.
It's a very tough program, and there were guest speakers who came in, and they liked the sound of their business, and they were offered jobs, and off they went, sort of thing. So it is a rare trait, and I think it as you say, it comes down to values, it comes down to purpose. And when those two things align, then I think you've sort of got the bit between your teeth, and you are on that path, whether you like it or not, and quite often you don't like it, but you still carry on. And that is what I see in the eyes of many of the founders that I work with. But equally, it's quite a rare quality. And I don't mean that in a sense of, you can't find it, that it's some kind of genetic thing that you're born with. I just mean there has to be that sort of correct marriage for you to be that committed to it, that you will put yourself in a place of discomfort for the majority of the time, to be honest.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, where do we start with this?
Yeah, exactly.
I think, by looking at your journey and reading your book and really consuming the amazing content that you do, I feel that it was a blessing, the hopscotch journey, the chapter, because I feel that a lot of the principles that you speak about in the founder formula came from that particular chapter. Your principles are commitment. The second is collaboration, knowledge, authenticity, persistence, empathy, and vision. And I feel that you were able to, from reading your story, that these principles kind of came together because of that very bumpy journey that you had with hopscotch, and coming from a person who's like a corporate background to suddenly, this is what I got as a reader and as a person who.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started Diversely, there was a period where the two overlapped. So I wanted to carry hopscotch on because I was still concerned about not providing a solution in the same way to, the 20 odd thousand people that had signed up to hopscotch. I felt really guilty about walking away from that in many respects. And I remember having a conversation with one of my best friends, and she said, you've just got to, you've got to drop it. You've got to let it go, because otherwise you will never be able to build a better solution to this problem. You will always be kind of held back in a way, and you can't do two things at the same time. You've got to choose and fully commit to this next stage of the journey. And when I did that, my brain sort of switched off from hopscotch and switched fully into Diversely, as it had to, right? Because Diversely was an incredibly intense, full-on journey. I was again putting myself in a very unknown situation. I'd never built a tech company before. I'd never raised money from investors before. I'd never sold SaaS tech into corporate businesses. There was so much that I had to learn, that I needed to create that space in my brain. But it was only when I came to write the book that I recognized exactly what you just said, which is that so many of those fundamental lessons were born out of hopscotch and, the tricky journey that I had through that period. And that I kind of like matched everything up, and, it all sort of made sense as a full journey. But I think, it probably took the whole of the 4 years that I was building Diversely for those lessons to really become concrete and for me to put them into action.
Yeah. On your journey, you mentioned many times that these were, uncharted waters for me, the tech part and everything. And the learning was very much into the process of your building that business, of your experience as a founder. Where do you feel that founders today need support when it comes to, like, what are the key things other than the openness to learn? What do you think are the key points that kind of stop a lot of founders from really moving forward and building a business, let alone growing and scaling?
Yeah, I think what I've discovered actually over the last kind of 6 to 12 months is that isolation is a massive issue for founders. When you're building a business and maybe you're starting out, it's not just isolation from other people, which is what happens, right? The majority of us, particularly now since the pandemic, if you're building a business, you are far less likely to be building it in an office environment. You might be doing it in a co-working space, but you're not doing it around people who are doing something that's, the same as you or on the same path as you may be. So there's that element of isolation. There's isolation from other founders who are doing similar things, so that you're getting that kind of momentum and that motivation along the way. But I think the biggest thing is isolation from the knowledge and the skills that you need, because there is an awful lot out there, certainly so much more out there available than there was when I first started in 2015 or even in 2020. But it's overwhelming. It becomes kind of this sea of just, well, where do I start? And it probably takes you half a day just to get to the bit that is most relevant for you. And so having access to that expert mentorship, to that expert guidance, to something that's a bit more tailored for you as a founder is very tricky. And again, to go back to that point of, when you're a female founder or you have caring responsibilities, it's even more difficult, because finding something that's relatable and makes sense to you is really tough. And accelerators can be expensive. They're time consuming. They don't always fit the bill. Finding one-to-one mentorship is expensive and may not be exactly the right fit. So I think it's just having that community spirit, that sort of accountability, if you like, having access to those skills and the knowledge from true experts, and having access to those people to ask questions. And, this is exactly why I'm building the Founder Sanctuary, for all of those reasons, because I know how depressing that can be sometimes. You can sort of wake up and just be like, oh God, how do I, another problem, how do I find the answer to this? Or, you just need to see things from a different perspective and bounce some ideas around. There's a huge amount of value in that. I've certainly found anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was for the first few years of my consultancy, I can tell you hands down, I wouldn't have done it mentally. Not the actual work, but that mental pressure that having a business does on a person, without the accountability pod that I had. We would meet on monthly basis. Knowledge is everywhere. The information is everywhere. And it's really hard to kind of sift through everything that is out there, really find, unless you have the time and you can throw time on it. But in general, it's really hard to find what is, really valuable information, what is from that information suitable to you as a founder, and then how can you use that information, with to put it in to put it to work. How from your experience and founding these businesses and working with founders, what do you suggest are the tricks that people need to do to get that kind of knowledge, to understand where their setbacks are and know what to look for, and to find actually the right people? There's so many people who claim they are the right people. So.
I know that, and that's the other thing, isn't it? Everyone's being sold to all the time. I mean, if you're on Instagram, if you're on LinkedIn, it's never ending, and I'm not immune to that either. Look, I always say the best strategy when you are building a business is to look for you in 5 years' time. Look for the person that has done it, that's been there, that's built it, or is successful in doing so. And knock on their door. And there's not going to be just one of them. Obviously, there will be multiple people. Knock on their door and ask them if they're willing to have a coffee, a wine, a dinner, a conversation with you. Because 9 times out of 10, people will, or someone's going to say yes. And then take it from there. Learn from who it is they may have learned from, get some names from them and some connections that you can then also reach out to. I think also where, and I do this now, if I use a service or find a provider that I really rate, I will go to the founder and I'll say, I'm running this program. I love what you do. I've watched your content on YouTube. Would you be willing to come in and share a specific masterclass within the membership to our members? And I mean, so far no one said no, because everybody loves the fact that they can share their knowledge. It's 45 minutes of their time. They're potentially talking to future clients or customers, and so don't be shy. And I sort of said this when I knocked on your door at the beginning of the year and put it on. I was
grateful, actually.
This is the thing, right? Like, people are human. They're going to be flattered if you send them a message and say, look, I love what you're doing. Can we do something together, or can I have a chat with you, or whatever it may be, and explain your situation. So I think you've got to be willing to put yourself out there on many different levels when
ask
business and ask the question. And the worst that can happen is that they ignore you and nothing's changed, right? Like same. but you got to ask, otherwise how do you know?
Yeah, I agree with you. And actually, when you sent, just by asking a question, I mean, we're connected on LinkedIn and everything, but when you sent that email, I was like, oh my God, this is like I'm manifesting, and it keeps me. Thank you.
Oh, I
Actually,
love that. I love
yeah.
that. And I loved your reply. And then, I just like screenshotted that and put it on
Yeah, and
LinkedIn. And
I'm happy you
everyone,
put it on LinkedIn, which means you've been receiving so much from this kind of energy that it's very difficult. Um, I don't know. It's not like I think from a lot of books that we read, or maybe it's pop culture and what you see in movies. It's like you're in, you have a business. It's over glorified,
yeah,
and you can do it, and you're really tough, and you don't need to ask anybody, and you don't need anybody for help, and
yeah.
you say it, and everybody in it knows that actually it takes a village to build a business. Yeah.
Massively. And I think also there is a kind of universal timing on this whole thing. Like, just because you put some effort in for a month or a week or even a year, don't expect to get it all back at the same time. That's not how universal timing works. And I'm sort of bringing my, my Reiki stuff in here a
Yes,
little bit.
please, we need it.
It's not how the universe works. It doesn't work on the clock. It does not work on the human clock, right? It works in its own way. You put something out there, you push and you push and you push and you push and you keep going, and somebody somewhere is going to answer you at some point, but it may not be in your mind the ideal timing. For me, it was kind of, I remember waking up when I was, running Hopscotch or running Diversely and just thinking, God, I just want that message in my inbox that says, whatever that particular business problem was at the time, or that client that we were chasing. I just want that. And if you carry on wanting that for long enough, eventually it's going to happen. And obviously, it did happen with the acquisition. But it took sort of 9 years of really wanting to solve that problem at scale for that to really happen, So you just have to keep the faith, really, that what you're doing is right, that you will find a way, that you have to stay committed to it, and eventually it will drop in. There will be a chink in the wall and you will break through and it will happen.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of content out there that tells you about, you do this and then this is what you get, and everything is so instant gratification.
No,
but
it's not like that.
It's not. And this is what I love about your 7 principles. It's like at the back of it, at the core of it, other than your purpose, is the fact that because your purpose is so big in building this business, you have to get used to the fact of not having instant gratification. That's like the the message. You will get there.
And look, I am, like I said, I am not immune to this at all. Like, I will still refresh my feeds and refresh my inboxes.
Yeah.
And right now, I put out a survey yesterday to founders, and I'm 24 hours in and I'm like, there's not enough responses, and I'm refreshing my flipping thing every 5 minutes, and it's just like, just chill, just chill. These things take time. So everyone's the same. Like, it happens to everybody, but I think you just have to come back to this sense of timing and this sense of impetus, and you have to give and give and give and give to get back. It's not an instant, give, get. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this, I'd like to segue this to something that you have in your book. Actually, it's one of my favorite chapters. So you, in your principles, you talk about having a very clear purpose. You've validated it the proper way as much as possible. You give tons of examples, and I mean, this could be like your to-do list. You got to read this book, you guys. Of ways to validate the idea, make sure that you're asking the right questions, getting the right information, and really getting that information to know valuable data, getting the data so you can get valuable information for your business. And you talk about setting the foundation of who do you want as your collaborators, people who can help you at home, at work, everything else.
Yes.
And then you reach to, I believe, is one of the most important things for any founder out there, hands down, to a chapter called Authenticity. Now,
Oh
I
yeah.
could be biased because I
Yeah.
my work is mostly on personal brand, but I love that you called it authenticity and not personal brand.
Yeah.
And I understand the direction of that chapter, but I would like to read something because it's really funny. We'll talk more about this. You start authenticity, the principle number 4, which is in the marketing chapter. You start with this: could anything sound less authentic than the phrase personal brand? I uttered those 2 words in front of my very cool yogi friend at dinner one evening at Soho. To me and a lot of people I know, it sounds like you're turning yourself into someone you really can't bear on Instagram, but whose every move you can't help but follow. I get it. Now, maybe personal brand as a phrase, as a title, has been used and abused and all of that, but the essence of it, which is authenticity you talk about here, is key to building a business. It's key, and one of the keys to in the toolbox of a founder's life.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about authenticity?
Yeah, this was probably the chapter that took me the longest to write. I must have rewritten this chapter about 3 times. And it's really weird because it's probably the bit that I know the best, right? It's because my background is communications as well. I started my world in
PR and comms,
and in the music industry, and then kind of in PR and in advertising. So it was so sort of inherent to me and how I go about my work and what I've always done, that it was so hard to write, because I was like, I don't know how to express this, because it just feels like common sense to me. It feels like everything that I would do when I'm approaching building a business or just on a kind of day-to-day basis or whatever. So it was really, really tough to write. And I had to drill down quite hard to find that word authenticity, to really kind of frame it in a sense of, no, this is what it comes down to. It's not personal brand. It's not PR. It's not your Instagram profile. It is what you stand for and what your values are. And if you can stay true to those values, be very clear on what they are, and make sure that they are part of everything that you're doing. So when you're choosing who to hire, when you're choosing who to partner with, when you're choosing your branding, when you're talking about how you go to market, all of these, your investors, all of these types of things, it influences everything. And that's when the marketing becomes easy, right? It's when you start to gain followers, whether you like it or not. It's when you start to be offered podcast guest slots. It's when people reach out to you because they want to understand your journey and they want to work with you. It's that kind of a inside out perspective, rather than oh my God, what are people going to think of me? I need to be doing this or building this or saying this or whatever because I need to put myself forward in a particular kind of way. That's inauthentic. Absolutely. Authenticity is kind of you from your heart communicating about what's important to you in a way that other people will understand. And that, that influences all aspects. And yes, it falls into the marketing chapter and the kind of go-to-market chapter essentially, but it's fundamental. It's in the middle of the book for a reason. It's fundamental to pretty much everything, and particularly when you're building a brand with purpose, these things have to line up.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm happy that you put it as an earlier principle than later, because as a founder, you need to talk about your business. You are the business in the beginning, and the business is you.
Yeah.
So who else is more qualified and more passionate and more knowledgeable than to talk about that? I want to dig deeper into that. A lot of people think that when you talk about personal brand, or when you talk about building a reputation, because of everything that is happening online, it's just online, and it's it's like online and offline. It's something that
Yeah.
it's who you are, and you say it so beautifully. It's basically who you are and what values do you stand for. How do you help founders to kind of rethink that perspective of them being the voice of their brand, of them being in the forefront of their brand, of them being authentic in the sense that is comfortable for them, not oversharing, but
Yeah.
to as a foundation to build that business that they want to build?
Yeah. I mean, in the work that I've been doing with founders over the last year, I found this comes up pretty much with everybody, actually. And it's kind of, again, that discomfort factor of, oh my God, I've got to put myself out there. I've got to put myself on camera. I've got to be on radio or TV. I've got to stand in front of lots of people. For some people, they're super comfortable. For me, that was not an issue because I come from that world and that background. But for many people, they don't. And I think it's about finding what works for you. What are you more happy with sharing? A long form piece. Are you more happy with sharing a carousel and creating something in that way? Are you happier with an in-person situation rather than a one-to-many situation? It's about kind of finding your own modality within that then influences the content that you put out. But taking a step back from that, it's also about understanding who you are as a person, your journey, and inevitably that comes out in so many of the one-to-one situations and sessions that I've had. After about 3 or 4 sessions, there's usually one where there's a few tears, and somebody talks about why this journey is important to them, what their past has been, some of the challenges that they've faced or perhaps their loved ones have faced, and then we get down to why they're really doing it and what their values are. And I tend to then kind of send them off with one of my resources, which is a values worksheet. So when I finished the Earnout last year, because I knew that these things were super important to the fundamentals of how I've built businesses, I did a course on cognitive behavioral therapy because I felt that I had a lot of this stuff sort of in me, but I didn't have the theory. I didn't have the kind of scientific backing to really translate it for other people. And so I put together a whole library. It sits on my website under what is called workbooks and templates, very easy to find. And there's just a load of stuff there that people can download. And 2 of those things are a founder clarity workout, and one of them is a founder values workout. And those things are kind of, once you understand that, it's then a case of, okay, I get where I get where my baseline is. How can I start to put those values into my business and then out into the world? So you sort of work backwards, get to the base, and then start to think about how you can apply it.
Yeah, and there will be links to all of those resources in the show notes. The founder wears many hats, and for so many people who are getting into the world of entrepreneurship, between being authentic and marketing yourself and your company, there's also a huge task and a huge thing put on the part, which is sales and getting clients and inbounding new clients and all of that. What do you tell your students or your clients when it comes to balancing those two, and how can the mindset works on getting yourself out there, but at the same time balancing that important part of creating a business, and sales is really important.
Yeah, it is. And actually I put a video out earlier this week about this. And look, sales is the most important aspect of any business, full stop. But the process of kind of building an authentic brand is also the process of building your inbound mechanism. So this is something that I started to understand when we created Diversely. around, okay, you need to have your brand secure, whether it's your personal brand or whether it's, your business brand, and the two obviously go hand in hand. You need to have that secure and be creating relevant content around that for your ideal customer profile to attract people, so that you've got that kind of potential inbound flow coming to your business. But you also have to outreach to people, and you outreach to people not just to get sales, but to share something, to understand their problems better, to have a conversation with them that may then turn into a sale. And eventually, once you fully understand exactly what their problem is, once you know that you have product market fit between what you're creating and what people need and exactly who that person is, then you can start to scale, and start to use some paid formats and formulas to get your message out there, on a much broader scale. So it's a bit of a process, but it really depends on what kind of business you have. For me, being the face of a brand and knowing my brand inside out is not the same as understanding how to sell it. They're two very, very different skill sets. And I spent a long time confusing those two things, to the detriment of my second business in the early days. And the minute that switch flipped, where I realized, no, you have to sell. This isn't about talking about it. This is about selling it. And that is a very, very different process and a very different skill to acquire. And, when I did acquire that skill, we went from sort of 5 figures as a business to 6 figures as a business relatively quickly. So I would say, again, obviously, as you mentioned, it's in the book, and that again is another journey. But the two things are separate, but very closely related, is what I would say.
Yeah, everything. It's like a chain. You start adding every chain piece to it, and it's really important. I'm happy we're talking about authenticity and talking about that, because that kind of a skill set that will help you not only to market your business and market yourself, but will help you in the process, as you said, to add another skill, which is the sale, which will later on be a third skill, another type of sale, which is when you're looking and approaching investors. It's a journey that not a lot of founders reach to that chapter in their business life. And some founders, maybe they don't want to.
Yeah.
It depends if they're creating a lifestyle business or a different type of a business. But that's another thing, another chapter or another skill set that you speak about in your book, especially having that vision.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you rightly say, it totally depends on the type of business that you're building. For us, there was no question with my second business that it was a scalable model. It was a tech model. It's a model that is attractive to investors because, your costs essentially stay relatively stable, but there is no upper limit to how many people you can have on board or be using your tech and obviously be selling it to. So there's this kind of like hockey stick curve that an investor or a VC will look for, and we could demonstrate that with Diversely. But I went through, a very tough journey with Hopscotch, where I was repeatedly told it was a lifestyle business, which I took as major offense at the time. I literally wanted to throw something at the investor that told me that. But he was right. He was right, because I didn't want it to be a lifestyle business, but that was the model of the business, and therefore it was uninvestable. And the majority of businesses, probably 90% or so, are really uninvestable. It doesn't mean to say that you can't find funds, you can't find grants, you can't find friends, family, potentially even angel investors who will help you, or crowdfunding, whatever it may be. But it's not investable from a sort of, VC private equity perspective. So it's very important to understand that. And actually, I wrote an article in Arabian Business about this not very long ago. And I write about it quite openly on LinkedIn as well, because I would hate anyone to go through what I went through with Hopscotch. And I just didn't understand. I just didn't know that. I was ignorant to that because I'd not been in that world. I didn't know really what they were looking for. And it was only going through Antler that I fully understood that world a lot better. And obviously then, raising afterwards.
Yeah, and I think this kind of journey of understanding what type of business you're building. I mean, you will let me know, but it's usually either you're very clear in the beginning, like I want to build a business where it suits my lifestyle. This is what success looks like to me, including what this kind of business will give me. It could be the freedom to spend more time with family, the freedom to work from anywhere, or it could be the type of business that you were looking for with Diversely, for example, where you had that bigger vision. It's a different type of vision. It's not the size, it's just a different type of vision.
Yeah.
When were you aware, or were you in the beginning aware that you were building a purposeful type of business? Because purposeful driven business is very different from any other type of business, right?
Yeah.
Were you aware from the beginning, or this is something that you decided to do later on?
I don't think that phrase, it's a bit like diversity, equity, and inclusion. That phrase did not exist when I started building Hopscotch. There was not a DEI industry.
No,
there weren't people with DEI in there, or very few people. I mean, I did meet some in the US, actually US based, who'd been, had DEI in their title, had worked into that space for maybe 10, 15 years. But outside of that, it didn't exist as a thing, So it wasn't that I set about it thinking, oh, this is a purpose-driven business. I don't recall ever describing either of my businesses as that. But it's obvious that that's what they are.
What they are, yeah.
Purpose-driven, impact-driven, I mean, meaningful businesses, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it's actually very hard to define, because when you set out to create a business, you have a purpose, right? You have a purpose around it. And as you say, it might be kind of more of a lifestyle thing of like, I want to build a business for this purpose, for me and for my family. And then on a grander scale, it's, I want to build a business that solves this problem, and that's where the purpose comes in. So I think it's a hard one to kind of define, but for me, there was always huge ambition, always huge ambition. I was looking at the US at what similar platforms to Hopscotch were doing over there. My husband and I were co-founders in this business, although he was kind of a non-active partner. So we were both very committed to the idea that this was going to be a global, to solve a global problem, to become a kind of global solution to the problem. And it was only after sort of 3 or 4 years of doing it that we realized that, the model just wasn't right for those types of, for that type of business. Sorry, that's my daughter just poking her head through the thing.
I love that.
Yeah, hi Clemmy. So yeah, there was always that bigger vision, but I had to, as I said, remain married to the problem and not married to the various solutions that I built around it.
Yeah. As we're winding down this amazing chat, I can ask you, I mean, whoever is going to be watching, I just want you to see the notes. I have it on a book. It's not, the notes that I have.
I mean, the research that's gone into this.
I love it. I love it.
I have to say, beyond impressed.
No, really. I was really looking forward to this chat. And I'm so happy we're doing it.
Me too.
You mentioned your husband, and I have to say we have this in common, because a lot of the things that I've achieved, yes, I worked really hard and I earned it myself, but there's this, it's not only work support, but there's the environmental support is really important. And not everyone has that. What are your thoughts on creating that kind of support as a founder, which is very important,
Yeah.
if you don't have it? Or how do you identify who are the people around you who can give you that kind of support, and what type of support can they give?
Yeah. I mean, look, again, not an easy journey. I was incredibly, or still am incredibly lucky to have a husband who is beyond supportive, who, even when I was kind of questioning whether I was the right person to do it, would sit me down and say, well, if you're not going to do it, then who's going to do it? You are exactly the right person to be solving this problem. Whatever the bad news was, or the knockbacks, it was always kind of, well, if it was easy, everyone would do it. That's his kind of stock standard phrase, which is really annoying when he says it.
You don't really like it at the moment.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But it's true. So, I have been incredibly lucky to have an entrepreneurial husband who gets it. And I do think it's a challenge if you don't have that. If you are kind of if there is a struggle around it, or if there's a lack of kind of understanding, then obviously that, as with any area of your life, that's always going to be a bit tricky. But it doesn't mean to say you can't find it. One person is not going to provide all elements of love and support and friendship and everything else that you need. So therefore, if you're not going to find it there, then you do need to find it somewhere else. And when people show you who they are, believe them. That's what I will say on this kind of thing. And at the time of building my businesses, I had numerous friends who I thought would support me and would be interested, even on a surface level, of what I was doing. And they were not. And those friends are no longer friends. They're no longer in my life, because it does become all consuming, and you do need people around you, not to talk about it all the time, but at least to ask you how it's going, or kind of show some interest, or lend a little bit of support, or just listen to you on the occasion that, you've got some amazing news to share, or some not so amazing news to share. And you will gradually understand who those people are in your life. It puts you on a different path. It sets you apart from the majority of people, and you have to be willing to tread that path and to accept that, and to know that on going down that road, you will become more of yourself, and you will find more people who are more supportive and accepting and right for you as a person. Yes, it can feel a little bit brutal at times, but the reward at the end of it is so worth it. The people that you find on this journey, and the friends and the connections that you will make, is so worth any of the sort of minor heartbreak you might have around, certain individuals. And I say that absolutely hand on heart. And I think, hopefully, reading the book and in what I'm saying, I'm being super genuine about that is everybody's journey when they start down this road.
It is. I agree with you. And I mean, we all have different circles. So the inner circle, there are people who might not understand, but they give you a different type of support. Like, for example, my mother, her kind of support is very different. It has nothing to do with the business, but it's just that, that kind of love. And you will have that in your inner circle, but that as your circle kind of grows, you'll start identifying people who are, who might not be 100% interested in your business, but who are interested in walking with you on that journey. And you will find your people. And others, I mean, just like everything else in life, people's paths cross, and sometimes they stay cross for a while, and sometimes they don't. And that's the beauty and the sadness of life, I have to say.
Absolutely.
But, which I love that we've reached here, because I don't know if I want to end this, but I'll go back to your mission, your aim. And you are here to support founders to find success without the stress. And these are founders who could be parents, who could be caregivers, who could be solo entrepreneurs, different kind of founders. Is there really a founder who can find success without the stress? I mean, success is, yes, the stress-free part.
Yeah. I think what I should have put maybe in brackets is unnecessary stress.
I agree. Yeah,
You
I
know,
agree.
just kind of smoothing the path, plotting the points, giving a roadmap, demonstrating best practice, having somebody to just shortcut a little bit in terms of the brainstorming and making sure that you're heading in the right direction and the sense checking, having a community that you can check in with and have some accountability around so you're not straying off. You know, it's those types of things that I didn't have when I was building my businesses, or only had them kind of periodically maybe, that would have just made the whole process so much more joyful, you know, and so much less of a kind of up and down journey that so many people go on, just to smooth it out a little bit. And that's really my intention. You know, that was my intention in writing the book. It was always going to be, right, let's get this all out there in a format that makes sense, and that is very sort of genuine to me and to my journey and everything that I've learned, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then let's kind of turn that into something actionable, something hands-on, something tangible, something with some energy, some in-person energy. And that's really what, you know, the Founders Sanctuary is. You know, well, it's under construction, but will be from April. So, you know, that
very soon, we can't
very
wait.
soon, a couple of months. So yeah, wait list is open. I'm sure you'll share the link for it and stuff. But
yes, of course. Yes, of
you know,
course. And this is the kind of space that sometimes, if you don't have it in the circles we spoke about, you create that space. I agree. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, that's where the kind of hopefully less stress element comes in. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think the stress usually comes from the surprises, but the more information you have, the more how can I say, not just information, but also, in addition to information, surrounding yourself with people who are with you at the same level, and with people who are 2-3 steps ahead. They still remember, and they kind of tell you, you know, just watch out, there's a bump right ahead, you know. But then again, I have to say, it's a blessing to have a community of people to be around you to do that, because it is an exciting time to have an idea and then to do the really hard, tough work that is, you know, that doesn't have a quick gratification. But that's the foundation, you know, looking inside yourself, building that the courage, because it all starts with courage, from the idea to being authentic, to building your brand and building a company and idea. So I love the journey that you took us on this book, and I'm so happy that you're here with me today, Helen. And I want to really thank you once again. Now, just for you know, all of the friends who are listening and who will be watching us, there will be links in the show notes, not only to Helen's amazing book, but also to actually a link to her website, and specifically to a resource place where you will find, we've mentioned it here before, you'll find 6 different workbooks, from the Social Savior, the Sales Savior workbook, the Sales Discovery. Oh my God, this, I've downloaded it, amazing. And it helps you so much, because no matter at what stage you are as a founder, sales will always be your number one priority. That's a stress reliever there, right there. If you have an idea and you're just starting out, you're still in the beginning, you don't really feel like you found your authentic voice, highly recommend the Founder Clarity workout book, or the Founder Values workout book. All the links will be there. Helen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the great value that you give on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and definitely in your book. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be to be with you. And thank you so much for making the space and just for taking the time and reading the book and all of your incredible research and views on it all. I can't tell you how amazing it is to hear that and how grateful I am that you've done that. So thank you very much. It means more than you can imagine.
Oh, thank you. Okay, how was that? I wasn't lying when I was telling Helen I could talk to her for hours. And I'm sure you've sensed her honesty, her transparency, and her humor in this episode. But trust me, you will experience that when you visit her website or read her book or check her out on LinkedIn. So, as promised, you will find all the links to connect with Helen and to get your hands on some of her great resources in the show notes. I honestly invite you to check her material out because you'll definitely have a no-nonsense kind of approach when it comes to giving valuable tips and valuable information, especially if you are a founder. As always, thank you so much for joining me this week. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends, with your colleagues, anybody who would benefit from this conversation. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you didn't forget to subscribe to the podcast. I would also be very grateful if you can take the time to leave a review. So, till next week, I hope you have a great week ahead. Don't forget to keep making waves. Bye.